Hello, and welcome to what I believe is the fifth episode of Blobby's Pit. We're going to be talking about non-traditional family structures, and I have quite a few guests, more than we've ever had on the Pit before, with us today, so I'm very excited about this conversation. I'm going to start by really briefly introducing folks and letting y'all know how I know these good people. I'll go around clockwise. Sopha is a fellow Twitch streamer. We met because we both stream Hearthstone Arena, and we do co-ops sometimes, meaning we like collaborate together on plays and strategies. In fact, we did that just a few hours ago. And she uses she, her pronouns. Below her is Brandon and Francesca, he, him, and she, her pronouns respectively. These are my siblings. They are partners. Brandon is my blood brother in the sense of like actually we share genetics. Yeah. So we are bonded, but not by choice. But that's sort of a topic we can get into, is like how much choice family is. And we have down here Erica, she, her pronouns. And we met in an artistic context. We worked on a clown show that I directed called Late, 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 Late with Sir Daffodil. It was kind of a late night talk show send-up. So that's how I know all these good folks. I think I would like to have you introduce yourselves by way of sharing whatever you would like to about you and your life, but also how you see yourself in relation to this episode title, I guess, or like why you think you're here for this episode to talk about this topic. I could start with me very briefly. I'm Video Blobby. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a theater artist. I stream on Twitch for any of you who don't know me. And I come from a very traditional family structure, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about non-traditional family structures, especially given this new house that I've moved into recently with a lot of people I'm very close to, and thinking about whether I consider that family and what that means as I make some maybe non-traditional life choices in my mid to late 20s. So let's jump over to Sopha and you can go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So yeah, I'm SophaPlays. I mainly work in a call center, but I also stream on Twitch. So I have a bit of a mixture of work, mainly talking with people. I use she, her pronouns, and today I'm here to represent a child-free lifestyle. So basically, I never want to have kids of my own. Having kids, I've never had any interest in growing up. And a lot of people kind of look at me funny for that because, as you know, like there's like this whole like lifestyle, isn't it, where you have to get married, have kids, get a house, but I don't really particularly believe in it. I believe people should live their life however they want to. So yeah, no, I'm here to represent the child-free life, and that's basically part my story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a conversation about this. In fact, I remember I was at the end of a 24-hour stream, and I was like dead tired after that stunt, and we were having like just a little chat at the very end, and you brought up that term that I had never heard before, exactly, child-free lifestyle.
Yeah.
And we had a really good conversation about that and how it's like a lot of effort to move away from the norm in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I was in a relationship for 4 years, and one of the things that I thought I had to do to keep my relationship together with him was have a child, because that's what he wanted. He wanted that traditional family setting. He wanted to get a mortgage and he wanted 2 kids. I didn't even want one, but I thought, well, everybody else had them, so eventually I would probably change my mind, like he said I would.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't realize how confining that was, and one of the best choices I ever made, I know it sounds horrible, was leaving him. And I finally have my own life now. I feel like I see myself much more than I used to, so I've progressed a lot more, and another reason I want to be on here as well is to inform people that being child free is a completely valid life choice. And because like if I didn't have people saying that being child free wasn't a valid life choice, I would never have made that decision for myself, and I may have ended up with a kid I don't like. So
That's true.
And we've also now identified the smartest person on this.
Oh man, if you ever want to live that nightmare out for an hour and a half, there's a movie called We Need to Talk About Kevin, in which Tilda Swinton plays a mother of a child who is horrible and who she hates, and it's really, really upsetting movie. So if you want to feel good about your choices,
I'll take that in mind.
yeah. So I also wanted to say, you use the phrase "I'm here to represent a child-free lifestyle." You can feel like you're representing that, or you don't have to feel like you're representative of it, because I'm sure there are like a million different kinds of people who are child-free for a million different reasons. So everyone here is talking about our own experiences, and we might make generalizations, but of course we're not talking about everybody who belongs to our categories.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I'm part of a child-free group, and there are loads of reasons people choose to be child-free. Like, one of them is caring about the environment. They don't want to add more pollution, because having children leaves a massive carbon print onto the earth. Also, they don't want to pass down any hereditary illnesses. Some people may die if they have children. Some just don't want children. Also, there's other like financial reasons, or even they just want to focus on their career. There's so many different choices to be made in life, and if having a child is not beneficial to you, then I say, well, you don't need to do that, you know, despite what everybody else says.
Yeah, there's an interesting conversation happening in chat about the phrase "you'll understand when you're older," or "you'll think differently when you're older," and I imagine that sort of thinking, that sort of language has been weaponized against you. Like, oh, you don't want kids? Well, you'll think differently when you're older, because it's not always seen as. Oh, it's almost sort of like when young people come out as bisexual, and they're like, oh, it's a phase, you'll get through it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been told plenty of times, oh, you'll change your mind. You won't know what it's like until it's your own. And they'd be like, oh, I could grow up to be a doctor. And then in your mind, you're just like, well, I could be the next Ted Bundy, you know? Like, you don't know what you're going to end up with. um, like, and oh gosh, I was going to say something else then. Also, yeah, another thing I want to bring to light as well, like, there's a lot of women who want to be sterilized. Like, they want to actually go into the operation to be fully sterilized so they never have to have children and have to worry about that. But a lot of women, even like in their late 40s, get rejected for that. They will say they don't want kids, but a lot of doctors refer back to them saying, oh, you'll change your mind. And like there'll be like people like late in their careers, like in their mid 40s, and they could even have medical issues. But the fact that most women actually get rejected for something like that, and it could be something life-saving as well, and it's unfortunate that we don't really have that choice over our own bodies. Meanwhile, men are a lot more likely to get accepted for something like that. So that's another point I wanted to bring up as well. I think it's very important to be aware of it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth considering that socio-historically children have been often used as a way to control women, or like put women into certain very restrictive categories. So that's not a problem with children itself, it's a problem of patriarchy. But like there's a reason that you have to have like a term and an identity for child-free lifestyle, whereas you don't have to be like, oh, I'm living a child lifestyle, and that's not that's not seen as much of an active choice, even though it totally is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of people say, like with dating especially, they have to put on their profile that they're child free, and they'll still get people with children try to be with them, thinking, oh, they'll change their mind in the future, or they may even have a kid they won't mention until like the third date. Like I've heard so many horror stories about that, how people are trying to drive people who are child free into these kind of lifestyles, but at the end of the day, like not having kids is I feel like what I found really weird is like a lot of parents say, oh, being a parent's so hard, it's so difficult. oh, I have to like stay up all night, I have to do this, and they say how hard it is. And then the moment you say, oh yeah, I don't want a part of that, they're just like, wait, what? Why? Having a kid is magical, amazing. And you're just like, what?
This is this is oh god, what's the expression? It's like commitment bias or something. I'm missing the expression, but it's this idea of like, I've committed so much to this that I have to believe that it's right for everyone, and I see it all over the place.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of things that factor into it as well. Like throughout history, we've had to reproduce to stay throughout the ages, right? Like it was mandatory back in the day because like there's a high mortality rate back in the day. But now that we have better resources to prolong our lives and look after ourselves, I don't think it's as necessary as it is anymore, you know? And also religion plays a massive mind into that as well, I feel like.
And
a lot of people feel like, oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I think that you're right, and those things are connected. A lot of religious traditions that encourage procreation and, for example, discourage birth control or homosexuality are coming out of this very specific history where like tribes needed to reproduce a lot to survive, and we're not in that place anymore.
No, we're not. I think it's time to adapt, and I don't think Dawson put in chat that's very relevant as well. A lot of people actually go through a lot of things to get pregnant, but a lot of people don't really see that there are other options as well. Like you can adopt children. There's so many children in need that actually need adoption rather than just going the traditional route of pregnancy, you know? Like there's other things as well you could consider. Like there's no one way to live your life.
That's true. And then if you adopt, you can actually pick a cute one.
Yeah.
You don't have to trust in your own. No, okay, all right. So thank you so much for that intro. Let's go to Brandon and Francesca now. Ahead and take it away.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so first of all, I want to apologize if I keep looking off screen. It's because we have the chat up on a separate device.
Oh, me too.
So that's what that's about. Okay. And so I'm Francesca. Brandon and I have been together 9 years.
Wow, congratulations, by the way. That's a hell of a long time.
Yes, it is. We have 5 kids between us. So we are definitely on the opposite side of the spectrum, and we're listening with jealousy at the idea of being childless. It's tongue-in-cheek. We love our children, but and we have so many of them that we do experience a lot of the pressure and stress of having so many kids, and a lot of the longing of, can you imagine if we didn't have children, all the things we could do. So I don't know, there's a lot of positives too.
Well, a good deal of sympathy to your arguments. Yeah. So I'm Brandon. I think you did the intro already, but other than being jealous, I think the reason why we're here is mainly because we have an extremely non-traditional family structure and relationship, frankly. So we've made a lot of intentional choices. One of them is to remain single but together, if you will. So we're not married. I don't really feel any great need to do so, and that in and of itself has presented a structure, like a confinement for us, because society is sort of built on the marital contract. So there's a lot of stuff that we have to go through that's extra that other people don't have to because they are married. But even just having our kids, right? So I have 2 boys from a previous relationship. Yeah, she has 2 boys, a boy and a girl from a previous relationship, and then we did the Brady Bunch thing, and then we actually have a 3-year-old daughter who's our child together. So Lord knows why we made that decision, but she's the craziest of the 5, so we really got what we asked for there.
Yeah, last time I saw you were talking about this. You were like, we just thought, wouldn't it be fun? What were we thinking?
it was like a terrible science experiment gone wrong. Right? Like, we're like, oh yeah, like, you know, we love each other and we're two like rational, smart human beings, and you know, let's make another human being together, and won't that be grand? And then she's a psychotic, you know, demon child. So, at least so far, I'm sure she'll get better.
Right. Hopefully by the time that she can use search engines and find this video, she will be better, so that she won't feel any certain way about that.
And there's another layer as well, which is, you know, the ethnic, you know, obviously, you know, much like my genetic brother who's moderating this, we're a white family, European background.
Very Caucasian.
Yeah. So Francesca's Spanish and Hispanic, so all of our and my first relationship was with someone of Asian descent, so our kids are all over the spectrum. We've you know, half white, half Hispanic, half white, half Asian, and so they're sort of growing up in this like melting pot, which actually is probably one of the benefits that we can speak to today.
Something I've been kind of curious about, and this will probably come up a little bit more later with some prompts, but how actively do you all talk about race with your kids in the context of things that they're encountering in school, people asking them confusing questions or not understanding why they're siblings or things like that?
Yeah, I don't know that we do have conversations with them about that stuff. It's one of the things that we try to actively participate in our lives with them. It doesn't necessarily spawn like in that way. It more often than not is random, or like, you know, based off the news cycle, or, you know, something that, you know, we'll jointly witness or see, and then that'll spur a conversation. I don't know that there's ever been any overt peer-to-peer questions or situations that have occurred to the children in school so far.
At least not about race.
Right. It's more about the blended family thing. So like, we probably get the brunt of it, meaning the teachers will, you know, assume that we're married, or assume that they're all siblings, or coincidentally we have 12-year-olds that are 6 days apart.
Mm-hmm.
We jokingly call them the twins, and they're in the same grade, and teachers will not realize that they're siblings.
or they'll be like, wow, that was a long birthing process.
Yeah, like,
my God.
They say it, and then they sort of get this like distant look on their faces to try to work out like how she was in labor for another 6 days.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like indirect, I guess, or like subconscious biases, but I don't think that it's been anything overt as of yet.
Yeah, we had one thing happen, I don't know, a month or two ago, where the kids said that one of the neighbors, that we're new to this neighborhood, that somebody was referred to them as the kids that have divorced parents or something like that, and it was really strange. And we had to have a conversation about that. I mean, especially in this day and age, like, so many families are non-traditional, and you know, there are a lot of families that, you know, that have divorced parents, a lot of children that have divorced parents come from households like that. So it's just really strange to have them identified that way. It was I thought it was pretty light considering other things they could have talked about.
They were confused by it too, you know.
The kids who have divorced parents is kind of a cumbersome thing to call someone. I think you could go with like nerd or something. That'd be a little easier.
It's a real mouthy insult.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because most marriages end in divorce, right? So like you say, it's not an uncommon thing, and maybe the strange thing is the Brady Bunch thing of the families coming together. Maybe that's what was weird to them.
Yeah, and I don't even know that child even understood it fully in that way, right?
Yeah, right. It's just, and with kids, the thing that they encounter that's not like the things they've encountered before is always what they're gonna fixate on, and there's nothing inherently bad about that, but when they're in sheltered environments, it can manifest as some weirdness or intolerance or whatever.
Right.
Cool. We could move on to Erica. Your video has froze. If you want to try stopping it and restarting it, you can do that. You've got cute
Still
expression.
frozen?
No, sorry, not you, Erica. Brandon and Francesca.
Oh, okay.
They look pretty happy. So
Alright.
there you go. Thank you.
Hi.
Cool. Hi, Erica.
Hi. Let's see. So, my name is Erica, pronouns she, her, and I live in Philadelphia. And I probably got tagged for this show because I had my twins through a donor. So I think I do share a lot with Sopha in a couple of different ways. One is I always wanted to be a mother since I was very small. I wasn't walking around with a towel on my head pretending to be a bride with a veil or like super fixated on marriage or partnership. It was always like wanting to be a mother, loving to nurture, and wanting to do that. So when I weighed out the traditional way of like being partnered, I'm just not very good at picking partners. Hopefully I'm much better at picking sperm. We'll see as they grow. So, I had some long-term relationships with people that said they wanted kids, but then as time went on and when the rubber hit the road, they were like, oh no, I don't. So it was like, thank you for burning up years of my fertility. So when I got to my late 30s, it was like, I can use a donor or adopt. To me, it's insane that in a lot of ways, it's cheaper to make Frankenstein babies through science and more, reliable is probably the wrong word, but less litigation and opportunity for a child to be kind of taken away by their mother after going through the whole process than to just get pregnant. So when I was going through the beginning of my fertility process, we were doing our clown show together, Ryan, and I think some of the like issues was like picking a wrong doctor that was like money hungry and that took the most invasive, most difficult process of getting pregnant versus like a quick turkey baster sort of thing, because I didn't have any medical issues that would require the choice that he took. So he pretty much encouraged me to like get off of antidepressants, which was a big mistake, and being pumped full of hormones and all that stuff to ultimately not have not result in a pregnancy. I think he saw like my good insurance from working at a pharmaceutical company that makes products for women to help with reproduction and birth control, and was just like, ding, we're gonna suck her dry. So I mean, I think like the vulnerability of wanting to be a mother or wanting to be a father and a parent, there's people that will take advantage of that fact, from the adoption route where they beat you over the head with many thousands of dollars to just give a child a home that needs a home, or the whole medical route. So ultimately I found a better doctor, a more reasonable doctor, and my one happy egg decided it wanted to be two and split. So I have identical twin boys. They're about to turn a year. I mean, I think part of that context is I had a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun, got it out of my system, then had these kids. So like, I don't feel like I'm missing anything and can be really engaged and really enjoy them at this point. Now, again, more parallels with Sopha. Another part of that is I almost died during childbirth. Like, was in the ICU, needed 6 units of blood, just hemorrhaged, and like it took a lot of interventions for many hours to save my life. So when I re-enter the dating scene and I'm looking for a partner, I won't be having any more kids because I don't want to die. So, I mean, there's complexities with that. I'm almost 40. the men I'm dating are about the same age. And, you know, like if they want to have a kid, I'm not going to be able to do that for them. So like finding someone that is aligned with me in that way is another thing. And then also financially, like formula is expensive. I have no more kids.
True.
So, I mean, among other things. So, yeah, it's just been, I've certainly done harder things. I think it's a joy and sometimes it's challenging, but overall, like, brings me a ton of joy. And it's pretty cool. It's weird, probably. Like, I'm going to have to explain to them at some point, you know, who their daddy is. Or, you know, I mean, they're also biracial. So the donor I picked was Asian because I didn't pick someone that just like matched me, like from a physical standpoint, and picked someone else that was Black. You know, I chose someone that loved playing guitar and martial arts, and whose favorite animal was sea turtles, and it was super chill, and that could paint versus, and like appreciated him as a soul, and like listening to his voice, listening to his interviews. Like I appreciated someone with his general vibe and stuff. So you know, how to introduce like and teach them about the other aspects of their heritage is something I'll have to do. So I mean, I understand it won't always be easy, but like this was like the best choice for me, and so far they rock. They're really cool kids.
Yeah, so you had this process of deciding, you know what, I'm gonna do this by myself. It's gonna be hard, but I can handle it. I know that I can. And then you learned that you're having twins. Like, what was that moment for you? Was that like, oh my God,
man,
double excited, or was it like double terrified?
I was hyped.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just kind of like, I looked at it like, you know what, like, you guys are probably not going to have multiple after school activities, not different ones. And you know what? Like, you may not have designer clothes. That's fine. It's just like, this other podcast I listened to talked about, like, her dad always said bigger dummies than me. And it's like, bigger dummies than me have raised kids by themselves. Bigger dummies than me have raised twin by themselves. Bigger dummies than me have done this. Like, you can do this. Like, just, you know, buckle down and level set. Like, you're not going to be a Pinterest mom. Like, you're going to do the best that you can absolutely do, and they'll be with a house full of love. But, like, they're going to cry sometimes because I have two arms. Like, I can only do so much at the same time. And, you know, sometimes they're both going to want to be held. And I'll try, but, like, sometimes you're going to be mad about that too. So just showing myself a lot of grace. So I wasn't terribly concerned about the twin thing. Like, I broke down and cried. Like, oh, I can't believe it's twins. What am I going to do? It was more like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, we going to do this. It was more like, like getting hyped before game day, if that makes sense.
What's wonderful about close siblings is they can become each other's emotional support, says Pill Guy. Yeah, that is very often the case with twins. So maybe you're going to have some very powerful kids growing up there.
Yeah, and they entertain each other. I mean, I like what they've told me is like it's hella work on the front end, but then as they get older, they can entertain themselves, and like it gets easier in that sense. Mm-hmm. Allegedly,
it gets physically easier. I don't know about that. Definitely physically easier.
I was picking up in all three of your introductions also these both explicit and implicit obstacles that you started coming up against the moment that you want to go in a non-traditional direction. There was also this really funny thing where Sopha was talking about dating this person who was like insisting on the kid in a way that wasn't good for the relationship, but you're talking about dating people who almost pulled the opposite BS on you of like fronting like they wanted kids, and then but the obstacles that really struck me was the process that you were going through, that you were describing, that you couldn't find an ethical doctor, you couldn't find a non-punishing medical path to what you wanted, and these obstacles are always cropping up the moment you decide to go off the beaten path in any way.
For sure. And I mean, Mom, if you're watching this, not to throw you under the bus, I understand why. Like, my parents aren't particularly excited about it. I mean, because it's like you're choosing a more difficult path, theoretically. I mean, personally, I think it's probably more difficult scrambling your DNA up with somebody that is not going to be supportive, and potentially like taking care of two babies, the man and the baby. Like, I mean,
if you're gonna have to take care of two babies,
you have terrible taste in men. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I guess if you pick the right one, good on you over there. You got it in the bag.
She sympathizes.
Hug him extra tight. It's hard out there. It's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be a team a lot. I mean, we have all the kids, and we run a tight ship. We can't let a lot go by because we have to like really stay on the kids. We're pretty regimented. We have schedules, but we try to have a lot of fun together. We have dinner together every night. I mean, we try to foster the family. We are siblings. You guys are siblings. We are a family. We're fortunate that, we get to spend a lot of time with the kids. The kids are all primarily with us. So, they play together. We try to do everything together. We try never to separate it into like you and your kids, me and my kids, together all the time. That really, really helps. But we have to be on the same page. The second we're not on the same page, the kids know it. They go after it. They try to take advantage of it. So that's important for us. As far as the struggles we've had, I think we've felt it more really with the marriage thing, not being married. There's so much pressure you don't even realize it. Just with society and family. The question is, when are you guys gonna get married? When are you guys gonna get married? Like, there's an expectation that will happen, and I think that pretty early on we kind of dug our heels in. We're like, we're not doing it. We're not doing it just because everyone's like trying to push it on us. Like, it's, and some of the stuff, a big concern I had was, well, what if something happens to you or me, and we're in a hospital situation and we're trying to have access to financials or to see each other and that type of thing, and how do we let it be known that we are partners and that we consider ourselves like officially partners even though we're not married. So we had to do a whole production of going to see an attorney to set up our wills and power of attorneys and things like that, just to try to give ourselves the same privileges that married people have.
Yeah, I know my mom and dad never had to go get a power of attorney for anything. So, yeah, it's that, like, it seems a little thing, right? But it's just an irritation or a frustration. It's like, well, why are you forcing us to do, like?
And you see it a lot with taxes when we were buying our house. For insurance purposes, we had to eventually go file for a domestic partnership, just to be able to, get on each other's insurance and things like that. So there's a bunch of extra steps that we've had to take that would have been a lot easier if we're like, just go to the courthouse and just do it. Just kind of trying to make this our path. And then also trying to make it feel real for the kids too, right? Like, we are not married. They know that we're not married. And just trying to say, like, that's okay. And we're still partners, and we're still, in this relationship, and it is serious. Like, we don't have to be married. We don't have to have that title to make it an actual thing.
Right. You can have security without the legal indicator of security. In fact, that legal indicator is so flimsy and often leads to a lot of toxic environments. No, go ahead.
It's a hugely litigious society, at least here in America. So, for sure, I mean, people wrap themselves into all those weird situations, and you get prenups and paperwork and all this and that, and it's just like what you hear about and read about and actually go through, where people will have a relationship similar to us, and people will be in a hospital situation, and literally the nurses and doctors will bar them from being in the room with whoever's getting the procedure. It's like, that just doesn't feel right at a human level, to identify yourself as that person's significant other and then be told, no, you can't be here.
Right, like your relationship's not valid enough.
Right, like it's a theoretical situation, but it happens in life. It's carried out, so it's bizarre. But like I said, we're at this point, we're used to it. We're used to, at work, every time we have a meet and greet or someone's doing like a introduction, 30-minute conversation, and the assumptions made, like, oh, how long have you been married or whatever. I just let it fly. Like, I don't really feel any need to correct them at this point. It's just been too long, and I don't care anymore. So
So there's a couple of good questions in the chat. Batted Arena is asking for elaboration on some of the challenges of not being legally married. I think you just did that. But a similar question here from Iso Lucine. Sopha mentioned the bias, pressure, and burden put out by religious institutions. Did Brandon, Francesca, or Erica have a point of view on how their family structure is viewed by society/religious institution? It's funny because we come from a religious family, and which actually started off vaguely non-traditional in and of itself, because my parents weren't married when they had Brandon, and they decided years later to get married, which I think was one of the better decisions that they made. They made the non-traditional choice despite what must have been a ton of pressure, and I think things would have gone worse if they just got married right away. But we come from a religious family, and I do remember that when Brandon and Francesca started dating, there was and like getting more serious and going through these intentional steps of combining families. There was a little bit of tension of like, but you're supposed to get married from my parents. Is that right? I think there was a little bit of that pressure.
I think everybody looks at it with a strange eye. I guess to answer the question from the viewer, like, yeah, you go through all of that stuff. So we both made a separate but similar decision to divorce from our first husband and wife, our first marriages. And so people didn't understand that when we did it. And then they still didn't understand it when we got together. And they still probably don't understand it as we continue on our path together. And we just have to get used to the fact that it's okay that they don't understand. Like, we don't feel a burden to like force them to understand, because we just are, I guess, increasingly comfortable with like our way of doing things and knowing that that's right for us. And we try to teach that to the kids too. Like you were mentioning, whenever these conversations happen, we routinely default to the, like, hey, we're doing this and you guys see this with your eyes, but if you feel a certain way, as long as it doesn't hurt yourself or other people, like, you should be feeling okay to do it. Like, don't conform if you don't feel like that's the thing that you want. So for sure there's pressure, but we're pretty stubborn. So
yeah, I think offering the confused world a united front and a confident one, and saying, hey, this is what we're doing, even though you're not forcing them to understand, you're modeling it for them, and that's how we slowly change things in the grand scale, I think. So I have a few prompts, more or less, of the model of moving from past to the present to the future. So I'm going to open the floor for the first one, which is about the past. What was your fantasy about family as you were growing up? Like, when you were younger, when you maybe had more more traditional ideas lodged into your head and didn't know how to think differently. And I think Erica already mentioned you used to fantasize being a mother, but never a wife.
Right. And I think like growing up religious, I mean, at that like 18, 19-year-old age, like kind of right at college before you really are exposed to other views, it was kind of like, oh, I'll meet my husband in college. Cool. Be married by late 20s, have my kids early 30s, boom, boom, boom. Because it seemed like that was the only route. So, I think like step one was early 30s. It was like, ooh, this is still something I want to do, but I don't see marrying this guy. I don't know when it's going to happen, but my eggs are about to be a little questionable. Let me freeze. So it started with me like freezing my eggs. And then, as time ticked down, it was like, you should probably pull the trigger on this. Like, you're stable, you're ready, like just oh, well, you know what? And then realistically, not to diverge too much. So, like, I was in a mass shooting at an airport in Florida, like in 2017. And I think that, like, really pumped the brakes and was like, yo, like, this isn't practice. Like, you're going to live one time. You have one life. What do you want to do? And it was like, I want to be a mom. It's like, how can I get that done? And it was just like, you're going to go for it. You can get married when you're 65, 70, 85, whenever. But if you're going to have kids, like, this is your time and you shouldn't have to wait. So, I mean, I think it was like more of a smack across the face instead of like a long-term, well thought out plan from the past. So that's kind of how it flowed for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that happened to you, and thanks for sharing. But like, what a shocking moment of clarity that must have been.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah, and I also want to reiterate, like, please feel free to share as much as you want to, even if it's sensitive we're on a pretty open channel here. So okay, but the fantasy you mentioned is a definite common one, and one that I see all the time, which is you'll meet your husband or whatever in college. That's a huge, and I think that for a while women didn't go to college, and then women only went to college to meet husbands in a lot of cases. And knowing now how expensive college has gotten, that seems to me to be a nightmarish way of thinking about it.
Oh God! I mean, like, and majoring in pharmacy, like, I didn't have time to date. So, yeah.
That's an interesting question. Is the innate biological limits of childbirth the catalyst for a non-traditional model to be inevitable? Maybe especially as people are trying to have kids later and later and later every generation. Maybe. Yeah, anybody else have like fantasies from their youth about what family was going to be?
I think growing up, so I grew up with a single mom, so my dad was never really in the picture. I remember like feeling as though I had to have kids, and like my mum bought me pink everything, right? Pink dolls, pink Barbies, and everything. And then all of a sudden I didn't want 80 on it, and I was like, oh, I don't like pink anymore. And she had to like completely change my room. And I thought like having kids was something you had to do because everyone I saw had them. But then at some point I realized, and I planned on having 3 when I was younger, and then at some point I realized how kids happened, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that, I'm going to adopt instead. So I always had this perception that I may adopt in the future, and then eventually I came across people who I noticed were very unhappy with their lifestyles. Funny enough, like you two stating you don't want to get married, I have my brother and his girlfriend at the moment. They've being forced to marry because they've had 2 kids. And you can tell they're not happy in that relationship, but because they have the 2 kids and because of all the traditional family surrounding them, they are actually getting pressured into it. So the fact that you're standing on your own legs and saying no to that is amazing, and keep it up, honestly, because seeing the way how upset my brother is, it kind of hurts the rest of the family, you know. Like, I always feel bad for him because obviously he doesn't want to be in that situation. Like, they're not a great pair together. Like, they butt heads all the time and they're cheating on each other as well, which obviously is not going to form a great marriage life, not for themselves, but for their two children as well, you know. At the end of the day, children kind of need some form of stability, and there's nothing wrong with the two parents being separated, um, rather than seeing two parents clash, if that makes sense. But yeah, no, growing up, I thought I was going to end up adopting children, but then after seeing my brother and his relationship, being with my ex, and then learning a bit more about child-free lifestyle, I think that's when it kind of kicked in for me that, you know, you can live life what you want. You can do whatever you want that makes you happy.
Yeah, all these like moralizations about children and marriage, I get where they come from, but do you really want to, at every family reunion, see your loved ones with someone who makes them miserable? Like, do you really want to have to interact with that person awkwardly at every holiday? Would you rather see like abuse and upset kids and like, no, you don't want to see any of that. So,
Well, you can answer that directly from experience, Ryan.
oh, you're talking about your bad wife.
My ex, it's a bad comedy movie.
Uh-huh.
So like actually like when the two of you were talking, it made me think. You know, we present like, oh yeah, it's tough, but it's so worth it type of thing. I mean, there's so many struggles, and I could maybe some of the positions that at least I take are from a basis of reform because I made all of the mistakes possible with my first relationship. So, it was a quote unquote like forced relationship. So it was an unexpected pregnancy, frankly, with a person from a different country that I was visiting, and we didn't really know each other that well. But all of the societal urges then like kicked in. So there was like, well, could the pregnancy be terminated? And I didn't necessarily knowing I didn't have a say in it, but I wasn't in favor of that. And then it was, well, could it be an adoption situation? And I resisted that as well. And then it turned into, well, you got to get married. And less from my parents, believe it or not, but from her parents. So she's from Thailand, and her parents live in a literal village. She's from the city, but so it's very traditional. Like you can imagine a different set of cultures, traditions. So they, to even reveal that she was pregnant, without us being married was taboo. So we had to go through the whole ceremony and do it in Thailand. So now we're married, and then we're doing the whole thing where now we have to conform to the normal sense of family, right? And it's sort of like Sopha, like what you're saying with your brother and that relationship where it was just a square peg in a round hole. Very difficult from the beginning. It wasn't even really a communication barrier thing either. I mean, she speaks English, so that really wasn't it. It was really, really a tough time with personality clashes.
Yeah.
And it never really got better. And it got to the point where, you so rightfully pointed out, like, who wants to see that? And do you want to expose your children to that? And at a young age. And the relationship wasn't in a good place, and I eventually had to come to the conclusion that, like a Band-Aid, right? Like maybe it's better to expose them to some of the initial trauma of separation rather than them be full-blown adults like in their early 20s and resent us for dragging them through 15 years of hell,
Yeah.
with us being together. So like that's the basis for at least my perspective on how we choose to have our relationship set up, because I speak for me. I mean, you certainly can give your version, but it's not a fear of anything. I mean, I'd marry her tomorrow. It's more of a fact of I just don't feel any of the necessity of it. Those urges. I mean, I'm just past all that, and it's like, I love her, and that's what I understand, and we move through life together, and that's good enough.
Yeah.
More of like learning from experience, if you will.
Yeah, you've laid out the ways that you kind of followed those fantasies, those youthful
On accident. Yeah.
I'm positioning them as youthful fantasies. It's not that kids are more fantasy prone. It's just kids are more vulnerable to propaganda, I guess.
And even when I was going through this, I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I was years old, fully unprepared to be a father in general. But I felt like at a certain point I had to take up that mantle. And I didn't resent that part of it. It was more of the other parts of, you make choices, but then you're like, okay, well, what did this choice lead me into? Type of thing in terms of the relationship I was in. So it was less about the parenthood of it and more about the other pieces of it. But I even, you talk about like youthful choices, but there's a story I can relay, like such a stupid thing now that I look back on it, but I guess it's like that, like ignorance of youth, where we had our first child, and my two boys are 2.5 years apart. So my son was probably like around 2. We were struggling. My ex and I were struggling. And the genius idea was, well, we'll have another child, and that. And it was, like I said, you can't have regrets, because our kids, they give us something that we wouldn't have otherwise. We choose to look at it that way. But I can look back at that choice and just say, like, making that choice with like such a faulty mindset. And I sort of just have to laugh about it, because otherwise you cry,
Yeah, so I mean I got to watch you go through this arc as you've gotten to watch me go through mine, and it was hard for a while, because I could see you wearing down and getting more and more miserable as you were trying to make the choices that you felt like you should make work. And then you turned a corner and you started to make choices that maybe would disappoint some people or alarm some people or cause commotion, but they ended up being these non-traditional choices that have led you to a place right now in which you are so much happier and healthier. Like I could tell 100%, and it's been amazing to watch that progress, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, one more quick thing too, like, it is really funny. I think one of the themes popping up here is the societal influence, because I think, Sopha, you made a point earlier about the expectations, right? And the people like almost trying to convince you, like, oh, you'll be a good mom, or you'll want to be a mom someday, and like, totally ignoring you and your needs and desires. And like, I fell into that trap too. It wasn't about convincing my ex that we should have a child, but once the child was consummated, then she, during the pregnancy, was very concerned, because up until that point she had not had a strong desire to have children, and she worried almost constantly about whether she was going to be a good mother, and the ramifications of her having this child. And I fell into these societal tropes. So, like, don't worry about it just because you don't feel it now. When you have the baby and you see the baby, everything will change. You'll light switch, right? Like, I'm just at that point just parroting society, channeling it through me, and it turns out like she's a shitty mom. So, like, I don't mean to be disparaging, but
No, it's true though.
She was. That feeling that she was feeling was right, and I was ignoring her in essence. And it ended up like, some people do change, once that event happens, she didn't change. So like my wrongheadedness of trying to like convince her that it was going to be okay was misplaced. So it's just interesting how we're so almost warped by these ideas and thoughts and beliefs that are put on us sometimes as we grow up.
Oh yeah, you tried so hard to believe in the tale that you were told.
Yep, I absolutely, it was like a sheer blunt force of will to try to make that relationship and family structure work, and it couldn't happen. It didn't matter. It wasn't a me thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to accept reality with that.
I think that brings us to a pretty broadly applicable truth that our cultural conceptions of marriage, for example, or gender, or anything like that, these categories no human fits into perfectly, and so we're all to some extent like trying to jam it, make it fit, and for some people it's just much harder than others, and for nobody is it flawless. So this conversation kind of brings me to the second prompt about the present, which is how has the family that you have chosen matched up or not matched up with these fantasies? We've been sort of talking about the steps that you all took to get there, but what have been some of the unforeseen rewards or some of the surprising obstacles, I guess?
I mean, I didn't talk about my past, but I would say I never had any of those fantasies about getting married or having kids. I just never really thought about it. I guess what I thought was it would happen when it happened. Even with my first marriage, we didn't have a wedding. It was just the Justice of Peace certificate. It's just never been like my thing to want to have that fancy wedding. I don't like all the attention on myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did think about adopting kids. I am adopted myself. It was through family, so my great uncle took me in. Him and his wife couldn't have kids, so they raised me. And a whole other set of complications and a backstory there. But I thought I would do the same and adopt kids. And I feel like in a way I have with Brandon's kids, because they're not my biological children. I think it's difficult to raise children as it is. And I think when you're raising children that aren't biologically yours, especially when they still have that contact, like they still have contact with their mother, I think it presents an extra set of challenges. I think you have that knowledge with your own kids, like, well, I'm their mom and they are going to love me no matter what, because, these are my kids and we have this bond. And it just feels like you have to work extra hard at that, when it comes to stepchildren.
Yeah.
Trying to make things fair all the time and make it seem like you're not favoring one over the other. And it's almost like when you're a coach to your own kids, and you feel like you're a little harder on your own kids because you want to like prove to everybody else that like you're just trying to be fair across the board. So I feel like, as far as that like vision of maybe I would adopt kids, like in some ways it's come to fruition through this relationship.
Yeah. No, see, I personally have never really been close to my family, so I think that's maybe why my adoption idea when I was a child probably came into fruition into my mind, because I've always really chosen my family. Like there's two people I talk to are like my sisters. I would do anything for them. And there's only one person I speak to still within my family quite occasionally, and that is my mum. Those are the only three people I would actually consider as family, and my cat that may have just walked by. And I believe that that's always been more than enough for me personally. Also, I think somebody asked a question at me in chat. How did you deal with the reaction from your family when you told them you didn't want children? That must have been so hard, almost like coming out in a sense. It was... Well, at first it wasn't, because I told my mum, listen, I don't want kids. But you know, like some people with that traditional mindset kind of go, ah, it's okay, you'll change your mind, or you know, they don't really respond to it. They're just like, they're just being silly. But then one day I actually sat her down at a restaurant and I said, listen, I'm never having kids. I want to get my tubes tied. And she was like, are you sure? And I had to go through that whole conversation with her. And at first, she didn't really understand it. And she said, well, it's likely you're not going to get that. So she's probably hoping I'll change my mind in the future. But then I talked to her later, like I think like a few months later, and the topic came up again. But she was the one that brought up the topic. And she said, actually, do you know what, Soph? It's actually good that you don't want kids because there's a lot of things you want to do with your life and it is a hard thing to do. It's good that you've made your mind up on that. And that actually made me feel very validated and it was really nice to have that exception. She's the only person I've told so far though. So I'm actually dreading telling any of my other family members.
Don't
But to be
tell
honest,
anybody,
I never see
Chad.
them anyway.
Chad, can you keep a secret? Don't tell anybody.
Nah, if they ask to see any kids, I'll just show them my cat. 'Cause he's basically the only kid I'm having in my life.
That's so great though. She like you had an open, honest interaction with your mom. It was probably pretty hard to do, and then she went away for a while and like sat with it and thought about it and came back, and you like helped her get to a more open place.
Yeah.
By taking a stand for this, I think that's cool.
Yeah, no, my mum was quite open-minded. She's open-minded and she's not. I don't know. She has some very old traditional values, and then she also has these very open ones. Like she took me to a drag queen bar when I was 11 years old for my 11th birthday, which is quite funny.
Hey, my mom did that too.
What?
Just kidding. Couldn't be any better.
But no, I'm also bi as well, and I came out to her and she said, oh, that must be really difficult because she knows some of the stigma against bi people. So yeah, no, she's a very open person. Well, open-minded. It takes a while for her to get used to it, but she's really good. So I'm actually quite grateful for that, personally. Yeah. Sorry, it's gone silent all of a sudden.
No, I was just like giving space in case anyone had something.
Yeah, I guess the part about my family structure I didn't quite anticipate was so my sister recently died of cancer. So like when we were taking care of her at the end, I moved in with me and the boys moved in with her and my parents were there too. So then they kind of persistently in the beginning like had like this much larger family structure besides just me and them. And I'm actually in my childhood bedroom. And I come to my parents' house every weekend. I think it's like they live about a couple hours away, but it's like I think it's good for me to heal. The kids like are so bonded to them and love them so much. They FaceTime every day, and you know we won't be here forever, but I think my parents enjoy them too. So they have like an additional like mother and father figure, and that wasn't something that I originally pictured. I thought it was just going to be like, let's buckle down. I'm going to be this matriarch, like doing it on my own. But it didn't really turn out that way. And it ended up being really nice in that way.
That's
like,
great that you have that.
There's a lot of like love in this house. Yeah.
We're jealous of that. Support. It's a distance thing. We live, well, Ryan lives close with us, but it's my family's in Pittsburgh, not in Philadelphia, and her family's in California, Arkansas. So like, yeah, like, you know, even just trying to go on a date sometimes it's difficult. But that's what say that to say like, yeah, that's a really awesome thing. And it's cool that your parents have that, you know, support of you in a way.
Yeah, I guess this brings to mind like an interesting question, which is that this traditional family structure that we are all kind of defining ourselves against, people people think that it's important to have because it's the best suited family structure to take care of you and your family. That's not actually true. It's just the most accepted one. And so, but then it ends up sort of being true again because there are the most institutional like resources and aid for people who go the traditional route. So when facing difficult times or obstacles or tragedies, do you feel like I guess relieved that you have picked a structure that works better for you, or do you feel frustrated a lot of the time that there isn't more support for people who make decisions like yours?
What was the first part again?
Yeah, do you like? I guess I try to think of a way to frame this question. If you could imagine a version of yourself that is in a completely traditional family, do you think that you're better suited to deal with stuff than that version? Is another way to think about it.
Oh, I mean, I just wanted to yield because I just talked. But
No, that's good.
I think if I were partnered, well, like now I have a nanny, and you would think that like being partnered, you'd have like a lot more support, but like a husband or male partner or female partner, I mean, they can't. It's unfair to expect them to focus 8 hours or 9 hours of their undivided attention on doing everything that needs to be done for the children. So like in a way, it's almost like it kind of seems like it works just as well versus like having someone 24/7 that has their own needs and wants and having to go to work and those sorts of things. Like in a way, it feels like maybe an equivalent amount of support, like even like doing housework and that kind of stuff. Like she helps me with that. So feels like all things being even, like I'm supported. I mean, and like if I wanted to go on a date or something like that, I'd have to find a babysitter too. Like it seems like if I was going to go out and do something fun, my partner would be there too. So it seems like equal-ish. But I mean, this is like, another dimension. Like I don't know because I don't live it.
Right. It seems like you have figured out on your own what Brandon had to discover, which is having a partner is really great and helps a lot if they're a loving and supporting partner. That's kind of the important caveat at the end.
Yeah.
Aww.
Absolutely. And like I don't think I could have my life choice any other way. Like if I imagined myself in that scenario when I was with my ex, and it was a nightmare enough dealing with him, Like, don't get me wrong, he was nice, but he was kind of high maintenance. Like, he never really did anything, like, around the house. It drove me mental, and it was basically like having a man-child. And, and when I imagined having 2 kids with him, like he wanted, I was like, oh my god, no. And it's something I've learned recently that I couldn't deal with children because I need my space. Another thing about me is I'm actually on the autism scale, and I have been diagnosed since I was 4, and I find it really hard if I don't have my own routine and my own time in place. Having a kid will completely disrupt that for me. Like, I need my peace, So yeah, a traditional family I think would absolutely ruin me and confine me. So that's why I'm really happy with my choice and sticking with this devilish cat at the side here.
Yeah, everybody hears that, and people hear that, and they're like, "Oh, so sad. She's just talking about her cat." But I kind of cats are great. I don't know, like.
Yeah.
I get so for me, like my flipped narrative about family is relatively simple. I grew up in a pretty good home environment. Again, fairly traditional by the time I was conscious. My parents were married, a man and a woman, just like God intended. And I had a pretty good childhood, but I always assumed growing up that I would follow that same path, have 2 to 3 kids, white picket fence, maybe meet my wife in college, settle down in my 20s, et cetera, all the, boring, typical stuff. But
It's the relationship version of the American dream, right?
Oh,
The
yes.
relationship
Yeah,
part of it.
exactly. And they're so closely intertwined. But as I went through my 20s and realized more and more about what I believed about the world and what I felt was allowed, and another big thing for me was living with friends throughout my 20s. I was like living with cool people, and I had this revelation at some point that, wait, you can just live with your friends. That's the thing you can do, and it's fine and it's cool. Nobody ever told me that growing up. I didn't know anyone who lived with their friends. Everyone was living with their family, their spouses, and realizing that has made me reevaluate a lot about what I consider to be family. And I started having conversations about, like I said, the home that I'm currently investing in. I consider these people family in a way. So kind of expanding the boundaries of what we could even consider to be family. Sort of lost the thread of where I was going, but if you got something.
Like human support and coming in the form of necessity or choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the structure that we all were born into is sort of, well, you have to do this, and if you don't, for whatever reason, if there's parents that don't take care of their kids or can't take care of their kids or whatever, it's like shameful and looked down upon. So that's the whole like necessity of it. Vice, well, you can choose to see humans that you're close with as family, and those, like, recognize those bonds as something other than just the name we give for them.
Yeah, and it's
nobody talks about that, right?
Yeah, and it's so tremendously liberating in terms of, it just like opens up so much possibility for you, because I was assumed that I would do all these things, but it's just the A, B, C, D, E, F steps of being alive that are set out for us, school, high school, college, and then you get a job and get married and then do this and that, and then you retire. And finally, when you retire, you can rest. It's taken a lot of overhauling in here to be able to reject some of those things. Maybe I don't want to bring kids into this world. Maybe that's how I'm feeling right now. Maybe I don't want to marry my partner, even though I love them very much and want to build a life with them. What does that choice mean, etc. So I guess that's a pretty good transition point into talking about the future in the form of, so given that like us folks here have opted for what we're calling non-traditional or non-normative family structures, how do you think that we, either as a group of conversationalists or like as a global people, how could we think differently about family moving forward? How can we reframe family? Or a slightly different question is, can we still be romantic about family, even given all of the violence that it does and the restrictions that it puts on us, or has in the past? Okay, that's a mouthful of a prompt, so I'll open it up to anyone who has thoughts.
I think it'd be nice if people were a bit. Oh, sorry, is somebody else talking? Oh,
let's go
for it.
Go ahead, Sopha, and then we'll hear from Erica after.
Sorry. Yeah, no. So I believe the way that people see things are evolving and are changing, and I believe sticking to the traditional values of what we held in the past is really restricting people on what they can do with their lives. And I feel like there's not just one way to have a family, I don't think you can just confine it into one thing. Like, family can be set into many categories. You can create a family in many different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's where we need to lead in the future, that a family isn't written by like a contract of marriage or even having to have a child to make like a family. A family is when you feel love for one another on like a really deep level, whether it's romantic or platonic. So that's the way that I see it, and I think that's how people should move on in the future. Like, just see family as for what it is, and as basically love, I guess. That's the way I see it anyway. Sorry, go on, Erica.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think we're pretty much there, but it also just might be the liberal bubble that I live in. And it also might be because my family structure changed during the pandemic. I haven't really encountered any randoms that have like said to my face, like, that's so weird. Why would you make test tube babies? Or whatever mean thing they're gonna say to me. So it feels like we're getting there. And there's a lot of chosen family stuff. Like, I've been celebrating Friendsgiving for a long time and like celebrate with my like friend groups. Like the fact that we're chosen family and sisters and brothers. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm gonna sound like a wet blanket.
Do it. Do
Excellent.
For it.
That's my role, right? Like everything, as I look back on my life, everything about it has been traditional, and I think that's because I have like this innate like force to buck authority and the norm and trends, and it just keeps repeating itself over and over. So now I guess it's. But I'll the reason I say it that way is I share your beliefs and hopes. I just think it's going to be tremendously difficult to overcome, because I look at it a slightly different way. Like it's all the societal pressures we've talked about this whole time, but I think there's also biological components to it, meaning thousands and thousands and thousands of years of behaviors, unconscious behaviors that humanity has like imprinted in itself, that, you know, throughout the conversation we've Ryan, you've talked a bit about, even we all have, but talked about differences and, you know, why do people perceive things, and it's like people hate difference. When I say that, it just means like I think it really bothers our subconscious minds because we've had that stuff sitting in our brains for literally tens of thousands of years. Like anything different is wrong and can hurt you, or bad and can hurt you, and you have to avoid it and get rid of it, or flee it. And so now like we've got all this unuseful behavior pent up in our systems that doesn't serve us well anymore, and it's almost this constant struggle to have to remind ourselves, like, nah, that's not worthwhile anymore. And I think a lot of people struggle with it still, unless they've gotten experience with it or have been impacted by it in some way. And I thought you had a funny point, Erica, about the liberal bubble. I think that's a real thing. I think there's a lot of people out there that do not share some of the same beliefs that we have, would cast aspersions openly, unfortunately. But again, I say that only to just be sort of pragmatic about it. I still think it's very worthwhile to sort of propagate this stuff and live it out through our lives and show people like there's nothing wrong with it. And to sort of break down those old archaic thoughts and beliefs that aren't useful anymore.
And we're doing our part too with our kids, you know, and trying to raise them to have an open mind, and they'll come in talking, you know, something somebody said, or a new word that they learned that is completely inappropriate, or, you know, whatever, and trying to talk through it and explain, like, you know, why it's okay, why it's not okay, why is it being said, and then just even life choices, what's okay to, you know, like, whatever it is that you're feeling that you want to pursue, you know, it's okay to do, and how can we be there to support you, and how can we help you grow? And when they see things out in the world that they haven't seen before, it's new to them, we have conversations about it at the dinner table so that everybody's involved, so that it becomes normal to them and they don't feel like, it's something that they are going to go out in the world and they haven't seen before, or that they're going to question and be like, well, why didn't we know about this? So we're trying to do our part to kind of help with it. And we're still growing too. I mean, we're still learning.
It sort of calls to mind a little bit of a sidetrack, but like when I'm at work, and I don't know if any of you experience this, but there's like a large push for like DE anyway in a corporate setting to like expose people to these beliefs that we probably all just take as innate beliefs. And people sort of resist it or sort of, well, what does this have to do with work and blah blah blah. But you're basically reaching out and fostering and trying to teach people that just haven't been exposed to it literally their entire lives. So they've grown up and they've seen all the same people around them. They lived in the same place all their life, and they're either uninterested or just haven't been exposed to difference all that much. So I see that as like a kind of a cool thing that we can take out of this for our children, right? Like Francesca just talked about, like if nothing else, they're gonna grow up with tolerance that other people will have to learn later on. And I just think that that's really cool, and hopefully we'll set them up for success.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the gift you give the world as a parent, if you're committed to that. And the other big way we can make little ripples of change that maybe become waves is to continue having conversations like this that are open and honest and vulnerable. And that's really one of the mantras of this channel, is like, get the ideas out there, talk about it, show that we're not like miserable in our choices, and maybe people will start to get the idea that, oh, maybe taking risks or being non-normative a little bit wouldn't make you a miserable alien creature. I'm gonna, in a moment to wrap up, I'm gonna ask if we can go through you all and if you would like offer things you want our listeners to take away from this. Really could be anything. It could be have a nice day. But I think that the importance of these conversations is why, for me, one of the biggest takeaways is try your best to be vulnerable when you encounter things that you don't understand, or be vulnerable in ways that you don't understand, rather than defensive. And this is just general advice for everyone, because I think that in that liberal bubble, there's this idea that you can convince people not to be bigots by logic, or by like giving them the right argument, or that they should just know better. But I really think it is about not being exposed to other things and other ideas, and having certain types of people demonized your whole life. Of course you will fall into that trap as well.
Fear, right?
Fear, absolutely fear. And it's the tribalism that you were talking about that is coded into us. There's nothing coded into us that says that this should be the way family is. In fact, quite the opposite. Our family structure right now is not biologically the most efficient or effective thing, but it's the fear of any difference. And that's why, yeah, just be vulnerable as much as you humanly can, even when it feels weird or scary, and maybe some flashbulbs will light for you that'll be important going forward in your life. We can go, I guess, clockwise again if you have something, Sopha.
I'm trying to think, because everything you said, probably less eloquently on my side, is basically what I wanted to say. Yeah, you put it in a really good way. Yeah, no, I'm hoping from this, we've just represented a general idea that you don't have to go by traditional standards, that you can just live the life that you see feels fit for you, in your own lifestyle. And at the end of the day, you are going to have people that judge you for it, but as Blobby says, not everybody is accustomed to our lifestyle, even though a lot of people have the internet to learn new things. That's how I learned a lot of my stuff. I used to be fairly close-minded when I was quite young. And then I learned to adapt after traveling with my mum and reading through blogs and every piece of information I can grab growing up. Yeah, so I think it's very important to bear in mind that not everybody has the same resources as you do, and just to be understanding of where they're coming from, and then just explain your side of the story. Yeah, that's me.
Hell yeah. You two got some advice for the people or takeaways? Hello, Misty.
I would just say, do what feels right. If the traditional route is what you're feeling, go for it. But if it's not, don't feel compelled to ever make a choice that you feel pressured into, because that's definitely not the way I think, to be happy. I feel like we've been pretty successful with our choices and really happy, the kids, because of both of our backgrounds. The kids have had a lot of exposure to different cultures and different experiences, and it's just, it's been a lot of fun to, see my half Asian stepkids enjoying like tamales and, eating foods that they probably wouldn't have otherwise had, with my family and stuff like that. And it's just really cool to have that exposure and that too.
That pressure that you're describing, I implore people, like, listen to yourself when you feel the clenching, the resistance. It means something. It doesn't always mean the same thing, but it means something.
Yeah, I guess mine's a little similar, like less about us and more to anybody out there who's listening or will eventually listen. This crazy thing we call the internet, but I just say, like, resist the stigmata that comes with all of it. Because, like you all have said, it's really important to value yourself and understand what it is that you want and need. It's not good if you want to be a serial killer, but, apart from extremes, like I said before, if you're not hurting anybody or yourself, I think, anything else is within the realm of possibility. And if other people resist that and try to judge you for it and stigmatize you for it, don't be around them. There's just no point to increase negativity in your life if you don't have to. And there are people out there that will share your thoughts and beliefs and desires, and it's just about getting that well-rounded experience and meeting people from new walks of life. So don't feel like the first judgment is the only judgment. Just keep going with what you believe, and you'll find out in the long run you're much more satisfied and leaving your version of a happy life, and it's really important.
It's easy to give up after someone scorns you, but there are so many more people out there who feel differently. I want to share my weird Jesus here in honor of your slip of the tongue, Brandon. You said resist this. You meant to say resist the stigma.
Yeah.
You said resist the stigmata. Stigmata are the wounds that Jesus has on his wrists. So
you're right. I've been away from religion for so long, I just forgot.
I think that's a delightful slip. Yes, let's resist the stigmata as well.
Please do. Everybody out there, resist having wounds in you.
And metaphorically, these traditional ass Christian values, we can resist a lot of those too.
Yes.
Lovely. I guess, like, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, like, this life is more than just a read through. Like, you only get one life, so just make it yours. Do your best.
That was good. I like that. That took courage.
Can't put it better. I just can't put it better.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes it takes courage to make the traditional choice or the silly choice or whatever, the simple choice of like, you know what, I actually just can't think of anything better than this Red Hot Chili Peppers quote, or getting married to a straight lady and buying a house and having kids. Sometimes you just can't think of anything better, and that's awesome. But we have to push back against the idea that it's the norm for everyone, and everyone's got to do it. That was a bit of a shoehorned in moral at the end there, but thanks everyone.
You're the moderator. You're allowed a little.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, lots of affirmation coming through from chat. Thank you very much, all four of you. It's been a really wonderful pit. I'm gonna say out loud the little credits we have here in case anyone's just listening. You can find Sopha at twitch.tv/SophaPlays. That's SOPHA plays. She does Hearthstone Arena and variety games. What's it? Darkest Dungeon most recently,
at the moment,
and the Alien game and that sort of thing. Excellent streamer. Highly recommend her channel. In fact, I would say that Sopha's channel has a real family vibe about it, more than most channels. In fact, everyone calls you mom.
Yeah, I never know how to feel about that, but hey, at least they're not my physical children, I guess.
Yeah, I love you, chat, because at least you're not my physical children. I also want to give a shout out to Comedy Sports Philly, which is an organization that Erica is a part of. She does improvisation. She does sketch comedy sometimes and all sorts of things. Any specific thing you want to shout out, Erica?
Let's see. Well, we're taking summer break, but we'll be back in person. But in the meantime, we have a YouTube channel with some fun short form, whose line is it anyway, ask comedy. Fun times.
Excellent. So
can't wait to see an audience again.
Yeah.
Besides my 2 kids.
Oh. So check out Comedy Sports Philly. That's sports with a Z. And I don't know, if you watch anything you like, give feedback to the artists because they miss audiences. I'm Video Blobby. You can find me at twitch.tv/videoblobby. Thank you, all of you, for being here. It's been a great talk. I'll shout out Brandon and Francesca. They have a bunch of great kids. So shout out to all those kids, Brendan and Vanessa and Aiden and Calvin and Cassie.
There's any credible babysitters on your stream, feel free to shout us out.
Any babysitters out there, I can connect you. Cool. I think we'll call it there. So goodbye, chat.
Bye, chat. Thank you for having me.
Thank
And it was
you.
lovely meeting you all as well.
Yeah, same.
See you.
You too.